So today we'll be working in my workbook, Paul, from Caesarea to Rome and beyond, and looking at the table of contents. We have already completed the first 3 chapters. In our present workbook, which is the last book on Acts, Paul is now a prisoner. He was moved from Jerusalem to Caesarea to protect his life, and because he has appealed to Caesar. His appeal in this time is a good thing, although it keeps him in prison longer. Why? Why even appeal to Caesar? Paul has the right to appeal to Caesar because he's a Roman citizen. Most Jews and even most people that live in the Roman Empire are not citizens. Citizenship was not based on where you were born, unless you were born in Tarsus, or as I understand it, Caesarea Philippi, who obtained that right through favors of a king to a noble of that city. So only those two people who were born in those cities had Roman citizenship. Roman citizenship was normally bestowed on you by the king, or you could purchase it again through who you knew. Citizenship prevented you from being whipped and put into chains before a trial. You also had the right to be tried in a Roman versus Jewish court. Paul's cases in front of the various governors should have been easy to decide. There was no actual evidence to the accusations, so the not guilty verdict should have been clear. However, due to the governors not wanting to displease the Jews, they did not want to decide on the case. So each governor, Felix and Festus, postponed the decision of the case. The best we can say about this was that Paul was confined, but not in a prison, and he was alive. Although the governors could not bring themselves to find him not guilty due to the Jewish pressure, they at least would not find an innocent man guilty. Let's see what's next in store for Paul. And so we are doing, Paul is presented before King Agrippa. Okay. Acts 25, 13 through 27.
A few days later, King Agrippa and Bernice arrived at Caesarea to pay their respects to Festus. Since they were spending many days there, Festus discussed Paul's case with the king. He said, "There is a man here whom Felix left as a prisoner. When I went to Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews brought charges against him and asked that he be condemned."
So who arrived in Caesarea to pay their respects to Festus?
King Agrippa and Bernice.
Right. This king is really King Herod Agrippa II. His family line is on the next page. Herod the Great, his great-grandfather, tried to have Jesus killed as a baby. His granduncle, Herod Antipas, was the one who had John the Baptist beheaded. His father, Herod Agrippa I, had James the Apostle executed. What did Festus discuss with King Agrippa and Bernice?
Paul's case.
King Agrippa was supposed to be an expert in Jewish matters and religion. The following are questions on the Herod line, which is on the next page. Looking at the family tree, Bernice is not King Agrippa's wife, but his...
Well, I got confused on the map, on the thing.
Let's take a look. Okay. Bernice, this is a family tree. So if you're not familiar with family trees, it can be difficult. But Herod the Great is the original Herod. So of him, he had 4 sons.
Right.
Aristobulus, Archias, Herod Antipas, and Philip. Remember, Herod Antipas married Herodias, who was Philip's wife originally and became Herod Antipas's wife. So out of Aristobulus, you have Herod Agrippa I and Herodias. And then Herod Agrippa with his wife, we don't see any wives here. He then had 3 people, Herod Agrippa II, Bernice, and Drusilla. We've met Drusilla before because she's the wife of Governor Felix. Her sister is Bernice. She is not really the wife of her brother. She is just his sister.
Oh, yeah, I remember that now. Okay, I don't know why I had a brain freeze. I have that often.
They have too close a relationship. So sometimes they say she's sister wife. They seem because Herod Agrippa never got married. So there's a little bit of hanky-panky, some people feel.
Yeah, so that's his sister.
It's a sister. Herod Agrippa
Oh
was
my
supposed to
God.
be, okay, yeah. Bernice had been married twice before she lived with her brother. Many believed that there was an incestuous affair between her and King Agrippa, especially since he never married. Many references actually show her as his wife. She will later marry, again, mostly to dispel rumors. Who is Agrippa and Bernice's sister?
Drusilla.
Right.
Drusilla.
Who is Drusilla a wife to again?
Felix?
Yeah. So yeah, it's all in the family.
Yeah, yes. I don't know why I got stuck on that sister one. But now
Yeah,
that, it kind of refreshed my memory again.
yeah,
Sometimes
because we kind of don't think that way. So
yeah, yeah, okay. I told them that it is not the Roman custom to hand over anyone before they have faced their accusers and have had an opportunity to defend themselves against the charges. When they came here with me, I did not delay the case, but convened the court the next day and ordered the man to be brought in.
let's see if Festus relates the situation accurately. Had Felix left Paul a prisoner for Festus to take care of?
Yes.
Yes, he did. 2, when Festus went to Jerusalem, did the chief priests and the elders of the Jew bring charges against Paul and asked that he be condemned?
Yes.
Yes. Did Festus give Paul a chance to face his accusers and have an opportunity to defend himself?
Yes.
Yes. Did Festus convene the court promptly upon the arrival of the accusers in Caesarea?
Yes.
So far, has Festus done everything correctly and told of the situation correctly?
Yes.
So far. It is interesting how nearly every member of the Herod line has heard that Jesus was the Messiah. From Herod the Great hearing where the Messiah was to be born, to Herod Antipas having long conversations with John the Baptist, to Drusilla hearing Paul with her husband Felix, and now Herod Agrippa II, knowledgeable in Jewish religion, would also hear at length from Paul about Jesus. Prior to this king, they all chose instead to succumb to Jewish pressure rather than stand for what is right. No matter the cruelty of their rule, they cannot say when they stand before God at Judgment Day that they did not know the truth.
When his accusers got up to speak, they did not charge him with any of the crimes I had expected. Instead, they had some points of dispute with him about their own religion and about a dead man named Jesus who Paul claimed was alive. I was at a loss how to investigate such matters, so I asked if he would be willing to go to Jerusalem and stand trial there on these charges. But when Paul made his appeal to be held over for the emperor's decision, I ordered him held until I could send him to Caesar's. Then Agrippa said to Festus, I would like to hear this man myself, he replied. Tomorrow you will hear him.
Let's continue to see if Festus relates the situation accurately. Did Paul's accusers charge Paul of crimes that Festus was expecting?
No.
No. For Rome, murder, treason, arson, and kidnapping were examples of those crimes punishable by death, not what Paul has done. According to Festus, what was the dispute between Paul and his accusers?
Jesus.
Yeah, about the dead man of Jesus that Paul says is alive. According to verse 20, could Festus even know where to begin to investigate the charges?
No.
Since Festus could not find Paul guilty, to make the Jews happy, he instead held Paul for Caesar, which appeased the Jews.
The next day, Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp and entered the audience room with the high-ranking military officers and the prominent men of the city. At the command of Festus, Paul was brought in.
So verse 23 starts with who entering the audience room?
Agrippa and Bernice.
From the graph on page 37, what is the relationship between King Agrippa II and Bernice again?
Sister.
Brother and sister,
Wife.
yeah. Although verse 23 starts with them, who is already in the audience room?
high-ranking military, prominent men of the city, and Festus.
Right. It would be interesting in the contrast of attire. What would Agrippa and Bernice most likely be wearing?
Royal clothes.
Right. What would the high-ranking military officers most likely be wearing?
Their uniform.
What would prominent men of the city most likely be wearing?
Nice clothes.
Yet when Paul is brought in, most likely in chains, what would he probably be wearing?
Terrible clothes.
Yeah. Is God persuaded by the clothes we wear or our frame or our prestige?
No, what's in our heart.
Right. So visually, this is another scene where visually is different than what's going on spiritually.
Yeah.
In this room, spiritually, Paul has the best looking clothes.
Yeah. Okay. Festus says, King Agrippa and all who are present with us, you see this man. The whole Jewish community has petitioned me about him in Jerusalem. And here in Caesarea, shouting that he ought not to live any longer. I found he had done nothing deserving of death, but because he made his appeal to the emperor, I decided to send him to Rome.
So Festus now presents his problem. Who wants Paul to be put to death?
The Jewish community.
Yet has Festus discovered anything that Paul has done deserving of a death sentence?
No.
Festus states one reason why he still has Paul as a prisoner, even though he doesn't find him guilty of charges deserving of death. What was this reason?
He appealed to the Emperor Caesar.
Right. So this was also a good and a bad thing. It may have kept Paul alive, but it also kept him in prison.
Yeah.
Yet we know of another reason. Since Festus has recently become governor, and although he wants to please the Jews, he probably doesn't want to release Paul due to what?
Because there's a plot to kill him.
Right, yes. What do you think Festus wants King Agrippa to help him do?
What kind of charges to send with him to Rome?
Right. Help me write this letter, because I don't even know what to write. King Agrippa is supposed to be quite knowledgeable in Jewish customs. So Festus is hoping that King Agrippa can help him write this letter. I'm sending a criminal over to be your court, and I can't even tell him what the charges are that do this.
Right.
Why do you think Festus had all the prominent men and high-ranking soldiers there as well?
How to deal with the situation.
Right. It's kind of forcing the situation, having them all here at the same time so they could all help or whatever. He's a desperate situation, sort of.
Yeah. Okay. But I have nothing definite to write to His Majesty about him. Therefore, I have brought him before all of you, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that as a result of this investigation, I may have something to write. For I think it is unreasonable to send a prisoner on to Rome without specifying the charges against him.
So now we get to the reason for the gathering. Did Festus have anything to write to Caesar concerning Paul's case when he sent Paul to Rome?
May have.
Well, he doesn't really, he's at a loss, remember? He has a loss.
Yeah.
He's asking the king and to help him. He's at a loss as what to write. Now we know why Festus has brought Paul in front of King Agrippa. What is the reason?
Well, just like what you said, he's at a loss.
Yeah, help me write the charges of this guy. We see another example of Festus's fairness in the matter in verse 27. Remember, Luke is writing this, so he is definitely giving Festus credit here. How is Festus trying to be fair?
Without specifying the charges.
Right. I can't really send a guy to Rome without even specifying the charges. It would also make Festus look weak if he sent Paul to Caesar without a valid reason. Now we may see why everyone else was in the room as well. Do you think all the audience would make a difference in the response of King Agrippa? Or is there another reason? Is it possible Festus wanted to make sure all the people were on the same page as to Paul's innocence or guilt?
I'm sure they'll come up with something.
Right, I'm sure they'll come up with something. But the noble people and the soldiers, actually, the soldiers are involved a little bit later because they hear Paul's defense. So, yeah, it's to kind of pressure King Agrippa to help him, but it's also, you know, it kind of backfires in the fact that the soldiers and stuff know Paul and know his defense for later when he's moved. Let's add another layer. Would all these people hearing Paul's testimony be part of God's greater plan?
Yes, because hearing Paul's testimony.
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes where we are makes a greater testimony.
Yes.
Just like I think in the case of the J6ers, we still haven't got to that point where their testimony will be the great thing, but I think it will be.
Yeah.
Not to talk too much about it on record, but there you go.
Right.
All right. So we're on the crossword. Number 3, Festus wanted to give Paul an opportunity to
Defend.
himself against the charges. Number 6, who presented Paul to King Agrippa and Bernice?
Festus.
Number 8, Roman custom was that the defendant had to face his
Accusers.
Number 9, King Herod Agrippa II, and Bernice's great-grandfather is Herod the
Great.
10. In the audience room was high-ranking military officials and
Prominent.
men of the city. 11, who had left Paul a prisoner for Festus to handle?
Felix.
Good. 1 down. King Agrippa arrived in Caesarea with his sister.
Bernice.
2, Festus's big problem was that he had nothing to
Right.
about Paul when he sends him to Rome. 4, the accusers had some points of dispute about their own
Religion.
And 5, who did Paul claim to be alive?
Jesus.
And 7, Bernice's sister is?
Drusilla.
Okay, yeah, so that's the end of this chapter. And